In Zulu royal tradition, the praise singer has a special mandate to recite the praise names of the king and the king's ancestors. His poetry also speaks of historic events, family relationships, and current events. But importantly, Mdletshe says a ritual was performed to introduce him to the king's ancestors before he was welcomed into the royal family. This was to recognize his new role as a link between the king and his ancestors. As a custodian of culture and tradition, he says he relates to the ancestors the king's plans on how he intends leading his nation. Mdletshe says a praise singer is also called on to communicate with the ancestors in the times of decision-making, such as when there is a declaration of war.
In Zulu traditions and customs, the praise singer is actually the one who connects the spirit of the late kings and the incumbent king. For the current king to have power over his people, he has to draw it from his ancestors. When all is said and done in the presence of the king, the traditional prime minister, the praise singer will then relate to the former kings, thus invoking their spirit in major decision-making, such as declaring war or taking up arms.
In the chaotic moments which played out in May last year at Nongoma, when King Misizulu was announced as the heir to the throne, it fell upon him to signal to the audience that the king should be saluted.
The king's name had already been announced, so I then recited the late king's praise and all other former kings. I also called on the late king's spirit upon the new king. Despite all the chaos that ensued, I executed my work nonetheless. The heavens then opened a little bit straight away. I took my shield and spear and I danced because I had already done my work, just like how my forefather Ngomane had done when King Shaka ascended the throne.
Mdletshe, who is 67, was born at Iceza in Ulundi in northern KwaZulu-Natal. He comes from a long line of praise singers dating back to King Shaka. He was thrust into the world of poetry and praise singing as a teenager when the late king's praise singer was unavailable at the wedding of late Princess Thembi in 1974. He says his knowledge of the past kings and praise names saved him on that day. He has had no formal schooling, but Mdletshe, who is a poet, can also recite praise names of amaZulu kings and chiefs as far back as that of Chief Senzangakhona, who was born in 1762. He plays a prominent role in the traditional ceremonies.
The praise singers take a little because they usually carry incense and burn it to shine the light for the king. In ancient times, praise singers will be the last to leave after the king was done with the day's activities.
The coronation of Misuzulu kaZwelithini is to take place on the 29th of October. Mdletshe says his wish is for the ancestors to protect the ceremony, and he called on those who will attend the occasion to pay their respects by wearing traditional attire. Vusi Khumalo, SABC News, Ulundi.